punish Kim Tran for what she did.
You want to throw her away and lock her away.
Yeah, I do want to punish her.
Split her family up. Deter her.
The same way.
She's separated from her husband.
Karen,
she's not going to cut off his penis again.
He's got no penis to cut off. That's
right.
The whole point.
The crime is done. She's been convicted. She's got the shame in her community. She feels the shame in herself.
And he's got no sex life. And he's got the inability to go to the bathroom for the rest of his life. My point would be, I just don't want to punish Kim Tran. I want to punish anybody, regardless of their past, who crosses the, let me finish, who crosses the line and physically mutilates another person. Gender doesn't mean anything to me in this case. What matters to me in this case is someone took a meat cleaver to someone who was asleep and changed their life forever, and now we're being told it's such a minor offense, giving her an English class will fix it up.
Not just English classes. She has to take care of her family. She has to get probation. She's supervised. If she skips a step, if she does anything awry, she does end up in jail for the full 2 years, plus whatever else, whatever other crime she's committed. We're talking here about making the sentence fit the crime and the offender. It seems to me that what you want, no, Mike, it seems to me that what you want to do is apply a cookie-cutter approach to sentencing.
That giving a conditional sentence for that is fair?
If you do this particular crime, you should get 5 years, or you should get 10 years. Just ipso facto, without any regard to the, without regard to the background of the offender.
No jail time is a bit strange.
I think it's appropriate that after she's admitted her guilt, that she has to pay some form of a price. Do you honestly believe that sending a person to prison is the way to necessarily, in all cases, get the appropriate price from that person, or is it going to undo whatever efforts she's made?
I would just say that the main reason I'm in favor of stiffer penalties for people who do violent things to other people has got little to do with them. The client, to me, is the victim. So I would say, yes, send them to prison, not just because it might deter. I can't say it actually will, and neither can you say it won't. But we do know one thing. They are punished that way. They are taken out of circulation. They are treated by a society whose rules they have violated as if they have done something serious, and they remember that. But you raise an interesting philosophical point to get away from the private parts, the sort of anatomically correct side of this argument. And that is the whole issue of how much do we know about a person's past before we sentence them and how relevant it is. I want to read you something, a little sentence out of Judge Ratushny's review of the self-defense law. She says, and this is the woman, by the way, who looked at 98 cases of women who had been sent to prison who had murdered people. And there had been changes in the self-defense law, and she wanted to make sure that no one who was in prison for a crime committed earlier didn't have access to this new development in the law.
Battered women's syndrome in particular, right?
And she wrote, to be relevant to self-defense, the source of the abuse need not be the victim. Past abuse in the life of the accused may be relevant, and her perception of the danger in which she found herself and her belief in the need to use force. That would mean that some person who had been abused by, say, a first husband could mistakenly see the same sorts of signs that in her mind triggered a reaction against her past. He dies, and this judge is saying that's relevant to the defense of self-defense?
Well, it's relevant. It's relevant to whether or not the person has what's called the intent in criminal law, mens rea. That's what it's relevant to. We don't judge the crime. We judge the criminal or the accused person. And in order to do that appropriately, fairly, and justly, Mike, you have to look at the background, the particular circumstances. Otherwise, what we're doing is the cookie-cutter approach, which is barbaric.
Right.
And it means that in some third-world countries, you're caught stealing, chop off your hand. No matter who you are, no matter what you've done in the past, no matter if you've got a completely unblemished character. You cross the line once, you get the cookie-cutter approach, and that's what you get. I think that's what you're in favor of.
If someone uses the meat cleaver approach, I think they deserve more than 2 weeks in Disneyland.
2 years, supervised on the outside, but she's still in prison. She's within the criminal justice system. It's a system that Parliament has adopted for a reason. You know what the reason is? We know that sending people to prison doesn't work in most cases.
Let me ask
it's
you
very
this.
expensive, and it doesn't work.
We've talked about knowing about someone's past as a kind of a way of making the justice system humane. Well, what if we look into the past of all the men who were in prison for sexual offenses and find, lo and behold, that many of them had a past that might justify the defense of provocation? Do we go back and review all their cases?
Justify the defense of provocation?
Some other defense.
Be mitigating in terms of that they were abused when they were children?
Why aren't we going back and searching men's cases out?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that effective defense attorneys should be carefully reviewing the background of their clients. I have handled sexual assault cases where I've determined that my client was abused at an early stage in their life, and although we've had them acquitted, I have always turned my mind to the thought that if they were convicted, I would bring that forward as a relevant circumstance towards mitigating the sentence.
We're almost out of time. I'd just like to make a couple of quick points. Looking at the Kim Tran case, I would say that when someone does something as devastating as Kim Tran did. And let's say the words because they're awful, but they need to be remembered. Why this case has been handled wrongly. She takes a meat cleaver, she chops off her husband's penis at the pubic bone while he's asleep. She doesn't go to jail. I say that brings the justice system into disrepute. It shows an uneven treatment of women under the courts, and unless it's fixed, Karen, I think that the justice system is headed for a big collision with public opinion. Any final thoughts?
Mike, you can't look at one case in isolation and say that the cards are stacked in favor of women versus men. We try to approach it in a gender-neutral way, and looking at one case to make these big pronouncements to the nation, I don't think is appropriate, Mike.
Well, I guess this is one we're not going to solve in 8 minutes, but I'd like to thank Karen McArthur, who is a Toronto defense attorney, for joining us on the program today. Well, we had a very difficult